The Montreal Canadiens select
The Montreal Canadiens are proud to select
Jesperi Kotkaniemi,
Ryan Paling,
Cole Caulfield.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of History in the Making, the official podcast of the Montreal Canadiens, focused on the future of the most storied franchise in pro sports. History in the Making is brought to you by Tricolore Sport, Montreal's official team store. From lifestyle brands to jerseys and beyond, I'm talking all those jerseys. You want a Jeff Petrie jersey right now because he's one of the hottest defensemen in the NHL. That's where you go. TricoloreSport.com has everything for you. Use the coupon code HISTORYCH10 at checkout. Receive 10% off your Jeff Petrie jersey. Or you can go to Foley. I mean, he's pretty good too. Visit TricolorSport.com today. We're going to be joined by the newest member of the Montreal Canadiens, actually, former Team Canada manager, OHL, CIS, ECHL defenseman, Ben Shutron. He is the newest Canadian scout, so he'll be taking care of the amateur scouting in the western side of the country. So big country, you need a lot of scouts. Ben gives us a lot of insight about how he joined the team. Caden Gully, he speaks about the values of Team Canada, which kind of mesh really well with the values of of a Jeff Molson owned company. So he also worked for a few others. I'm not going to give away all the secrets here, but it's a pretty interesting interview because Ben is a really smart guy. He's open to learning, so it's exactly the kind of guy that you want on your scouting staff. First off, though, as per usual, we're going to do a quick oversight of all the prospects. Well, not all the prospects, because we got to keep some. And right now, mostly we're going to be focusing on American prospects. So the ones that are playing. So first round pick, Cole Caulfield, stop scoring. No, wait. He never stops scoring because that's all he does. I mean, he's up to, what is it? Let me see here. 10 goals, 11 assists. I mean, come on. He's doing quite good. He's way over a point per game. I think it's in 16 games. So what's impressing me with Cole Caulfield? Yeah. It's impressive that he scores a goal every game. Actually, I'm almost getting bored of him scoring so many goals. But what I really love is his complete game. He's playing that defensive game that'll make that transition to the NHL much easier. So defensively responsible hockey leads to offensive chances. And that's what Cole Caulfield's doing. So it's not just offense. This guy is turning into a complete player, studies the game closely, and Habs fans have a good reason to be excited. Staying in Wisconsin, let's talk about Jack Gorniak real quick. He's up to, 4 goals, 5 assists in 14 games. So keep in mind, this is a guy that he finished with 7 points in 28 games last year. Very encouraging on his part. We're not going to praise Jordan Harris or Jaden Struble on this podcast. We're going to keep it for the next one, but they're still doing really well. And finally, Luke Tuck, he started his NCAA career. So he was a second-round pick this year. You'll probably recognize his name, Alex. His brother Alex plays for the Knights, I believe. And he started with Boston University. So in 6 games, 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points in 6 games. Ridiculous pace for a freshman. We're gonna have to keep an eye on him. I don't think that's the kind of pace he can keep up. I mean, I hope he does, but even if he doesn't, I'm seeing a guy that's aggressive on the forecheck. He's creating chances with his body, good speed, and so far he's been just driving the play for Boston University. Very aggressive, good playmaking, and that's what I love seeing from, obviously, guys, second-round picks. He's going to be given plenty of opportunities to develop at Boston University, but so far, so good. That's a heck of a way to start your NCAA career. Moving on, we're going to go to some questions here. We're going to jump right into the mailbag. Johnny Simard, 24, asks, what do you think of the recent Habs 7th-round pick, Raphaël Harvey-Pinard and Brett Stapley? Could they be found money? I'm always... I don't want to hype guys up too much, but the Canadiens have a pattern, and this is the Trevor Timmins method, right? It goes well beyond just Caden Primo and Jake Evans. You can go down to Rafael Diaz and Yaroslav Halak. You know, he was picking guys that made NHL careers in the 9th round. So this is the Timmins special. I wouldn't be surprised if RHP and Brett Stapley end up being NHLers. Now, on that note, it's quite rare. Like, the Canadiens are already batting way above average, so I don't want to hype him up too much, but there's potential there. Hervé Pinard is currently at Laval Rocket Camp, and from the people I spoke to told me he had a very impressive first scrimmage. It's early. We're going to have to give him time, but all signs point to Hervé Pinard being an important part of the Laval Rocket this year. Brett Stapley is going to need a little more time, but so far, from what I'm told, Obviously, he's going to have to pick it up a little bit offensively, but there's potential there as well. So that's the Trevor Timmins. Yeah, found money, but not really. There's a lot of work put into this. You should see the list that these guys have. They don't show me, but I assume it's very, very long. Ralph Sagredo asks, Mark, can they be real contenders without an elite defenseman? I have an issue with you saying that, but we'll get back to it as well. Benjamin has gone all in, having a team with no weak spots, but also very few top guys in the top 10 guys at their position. So I get what you're saying, Ralph. But here's where I disagree. There is an elite defenseman on here, and I don't want to throw daggers at anyone else, but I do truly believe that Jeff Petrie is among the top 10 best defensemen in the NHL. Right now, I think he's among the top 3 best defensemen in the NHL. He's so incredibly clutch. He produces offense at a ridiculous rate. He's very defensively responsible. Every guy he plays with plays better. It's called the Petrie effect. So I think they do have one. And then you talk about like the other guys are no slouches either. You have Shea Weber that's there as well. Romanov is actually playing really well. Brett Kulak really doesn't get enough respect in the NHL. He should be known as one of the best complimentary guys in the NHL. He's very, very good. So Joel Edmondson's fitting in well. And then you have obviously Ben Shutron, nice physical presence, and you have some good guys ready to come in there. So maybe not like a Norris winner, although again, Jeff Petrie should be considered for a Norris, but I really like this defensive squad, especially the depth. And when you say no top 10 guys, again, I kind of disagree there because Brendan Gallagher is the best guy in the league for creating shots, for creating chances, for scoring goals, for, you know what I mean? So obviously he doesn't score a ton of the power play. Maybe that'll change this year, but I think when you actually look at the numbers and you kind of throw away the preconceived notions, you're going to see some top 10 guys there. For example, like Philippe Danault finished, in my opinion, when you consider both ends of the ice, as one of the top 10 defensemen last year. Nick Suzuki has the potential to be a top 5 guy in this league at his position. So, I mean, he's already, in my opinion, a first-line center, but that extends to the first 31. So I get what you're saying. Maybe there's no like Sidney Crosby on the roster, but I do like the balance here because that means it's tougher to game plan against. Coaches can't just circle one guy and say, stop him. The Canadiens roll all 4 lines, and there's a very small gap between their top line and their bottom line. So I love it. I love the roster composition, and that's a Claude Julien team. Run all your lines. So get what you're saying. Disagree with that. Jeff Petrie should put some respect on Jeff Petrie's name, but I actually like their strategy and the roster this year. And finally, JP Michaud asks, what are your thoughts on officiating during the last couple of games? Okay. I think, and I know this is going to get me in trouble, but I think refs do a pretty darn good job, and they're never out to get your team. Now, they make mistakes, and it can often seem like they're out to get you, but they really aren't. I feel like when they have an off night, they have an off night for everybody. When you don't think they're being nice to the Habs, you look at the Twitter feed from other fans that they're playing against, and they think it's the exact same thing, right? So you always feel like you're being targeted, but no. Refs don't have it out for Montreal. It all evens out by the end of the year. Yeah, right now it doesn't look good because there's been some ticky-tacky calls. But if you ask Claude Julien, he won't tell you it's the officiating that's the issue right now. He'll tell you it's his players taking penalties. So forget the officiating, tighten up the discipline, and no, the refs aren't out to get you. I know it feels that way sometimes. If you have any questions about the future of the franchise, particularly the prospects, tweet them to the Montreal Canadiens account using the hashtag Mark's Mailbag. And I will answer your question on the podcast. Also, if there's any pandering tweets about like just how much you love the podcast, I will read those too, because I love to hear myself get complimented. Did you know the Canadiens will be wearing their new reverse retro jerseys for select games this year? They are the blue ones. They are gorgeous, and I know you want to get your hands on one of them. You can go to tricolorsport.com right now. That's where they are selling the jerseys. You'll see them on the ice. Once you see them up close, gorgeous jerseys. I want one. I know you want one. tricolorsport.com is where you get them. We're speaking with the newest member of the Montreal Canadiens, former Team Canada manager, CIS and Memorial Cup champion, and now the Canadiens Western Amateur Scout, Ben Shutron. Thanks for joining the show.
My pleasure, Mark. Thank you for having me, and looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
So we're going to start this off. We spoke a little bit before we got recording, but you're an Orleans native, right?
I am. That's correct. Born and raised in Orleans.
I am also an Orleans native. So I have to ask you this question. I mean, looking at you, you might not have an answer for this, but I definitely have an answer for this. Have you ever tried the poutine truck called Frito Mania on Saint Joseph Boulevard?
Oui. J'avais essayé. I've tried it, and I can still remember it. I was very young when I tried it, but that's how good it is. If I still remember it now, and I miss it for sure.
See, that's how we know you're meant for the Canadiens organization. You have poutine memory. It's a key skill to have here. So, all right. Ottawa split between Habs fans, Leafs fans, and Sens fans. Who were you a fan of when you were growing up?
Well, I mean, I guess I had, allegiances everywhere. I mean, I grew up with the Ottawa Senators. When they came into the league, I was a very young boy. I was about 6 years old. So I basically grew up with that team. My uncle, yeah, absolutely, I know, but I'll keep going here. My uncle actually worked what was then called the Corral Center. He was a manager of engineering, and then he took a position at the Air Canada Center when that opened up. So our whole family was a bit of Senators, bit of Leafs. And then on my father's side, his whole side of the family grew up in Fort Collonge, Quebec. And, so they all grew up fans of the Montreal Canadiens. So, everything was sprinkled around all those three teams, obviously with Ottawa being a little bit central, but I know my father, his favorite player is Yvon Cornway, and but for myself, I grew up the majority of my life a Sens fan.
Yeah, and we're really sorry to hear that, but no, you're obviously in the right spot now, and that was normal in Ottawa, right? It was people were split, allegiances were split, and a lot of TVs were bought because people need to watch at a different time. But I'm going to ask you this: how did this job come to fruition with the Canadiens? Obviously, you worked with Hockey Canada, and we're going to get into that in depth a little bit later. But how did this arrangement with the Canadiens to become their Western Scout? How did it come about?
Yeah, you know what, Mark? Very good question. I think it was, something that was happening a little bit behind the scenes, but and something obviously invested in for a number of years. But I'll be honest, the opportunity really started 2016. At the NHL draft, I had worked very closely with Ryan Jankowski, who I believe is also a former Montreal Canadiens scout. And we were at the NHL draft that year, and it was on day 2, and we had stayed and we were watching, rounds 2 through 7. And, I asked Ryan, if it'd be possible to potentially, get into scouting, help him around Calgary, watch some of our national team prospects as it came through Alberta, and asked if that potentially be an opportunity. So Ryan was very great with me. He approached Scott Salmond, our vice president of national teams at the time, and now senior vice president of national teams. And those two gentlemen both said yes and gave me the opportunity. So to be honest, that's where I started. Without those two gentlemen, I likely would not be sitting here speaking with you today. And so I had that opportunity, and I did that for about 2 years. Along the way, traveling up to Edmonton or spending time in Red Deer, Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, and Brooks and some of the other arenas in the AJHL and WHL. Then you start to meet people in the arena. And, Ryan Jankowski had moved on to the Buffalo Sabres at the time, and Brad McEwen was then hired as our head scout at Hockey Canada. And then I continued to help Brad once he came on for another year. So, fast forward going through the U18 World Championship, you build relationships, the gentleman like Ken Morin, who has since moved on to the Florida Panthers. And then, then you meet Trevor Timmins. But knowing Trevor, he's an Ottawa boy. And it was funny. I got back from the under-18 World Championships one year, and it just came to be that I was back in Orleans and visiting my family. And Trevor asked if we could meet and just have a coffee and discuss the under-18 experience and some of our players. And that's basically where it started. So after that meeting, he had asked me to put some reports together on some of the players in the Western Hockey League that I had seen and known well. I passed those on to him, and then I actually came on with the Canadiens on a part-time basis in a part-time role while I worked at Hockey Canada. So technically, I know I'm starting full-time now in my first season, but this is technically, I guess year 3 for myself with the Canadiens as a part-time amateur scout, and now becoming a full-time amateur scout in the West. So, I honestly, I can't say enough about the opportunity that's been given to me by Hockey Canada and the people there. It's been a tremendous place to grow and learn. And, I'm forever indebted to them. And to be honest, I wouldn't be sitting here speaking with you if they didn't provide me with those opportunities to learn and to grow. And same thing with the Montreal Canadiens and the opportunities that Trevor afforded to me as well. So it's been a bit of a journey. Obviously a bit of a work in progress, but here we are today.
So you got scouted by the scouts to become a scout. Is that that's
so.
essentially what happened there? Okay.
Yes.
What does it mean to be a team manager? Because I'm not going to lie to you. I see that and I kind of think my mind goes to equipment manager, but I'm wrong here, right? So what is you were the team manager at the Spengler Cup and at the World Juniors. What does that mean exactly to be a team manager for Hockey Canada?
Well, you know what? It means a lot. It means a lot of different things. And I think, the best way to describe the role is you basically have your hands in everything. And, I know working with our staff here and with Scott Salmon, our job at Hockey Canada is ultimately to set up all of our participants, all of our stakeholders for success, and ultimately let the managers manage, the coaches coach, the players play, and the support staff support. But with that being said, in the role of team manager, if you're a coordinator, if you're a vice president, you're a director, you're basically, you have your hands in everything and you're helping everyone. So I would say the role for myself, I really started off as being primarily team services based and logistics based. Mm-hmm. And then, obviously I had an interest in the scouting side and the hockey side, and it just sort of grew internally from there. But over the years, you gain more experience, you work with great people, and once they get to know you, they tend to open up some doors for you and give you some opportunities to help you grow and learn. And that's exactly what happened for me at Hockey Canada. I mean, having the opportunity to work with the gentlemen such as Alan Miller, who's the general manager. Moose John was manager group member at the recent World Juniors, and we did a couple of U18s together, and he was great for me. Ron Francis was another gentleman that I worked with on the Spengler Cup and then the Men's World Championship. And now he's the general manager of Seattle Kraken. Jason Botterill as well. He was a part of that group. And Sean Burke, who's also a pro scout with the Canadiens and a goaltending consultant. And I worked with Sean on a couple of events and a couple of Spengler Cups. So the role is primarily team services, logistics based, but it actually has, a very strong and a very prominent hockey component to it as well. Primarily maybe a complementary support role, but it's very cumbersome and it's a great role.
Yeah. So you're doing a lot of work and you're helping everyone out. It sounds a lot like my boss, especially when I bother close to midnight with random texts there about my work the next day. I'm sure you have to deal with a lot of that, which brings us perfectly to our next point. You're already answering some of the questions I had lined up for you. So it shows the foresight here. And I love that. Working at Hockey Canada means you're surrounded by legends, right? What did you learn? What stuck with you the most? And what was the most valuable lesson? Did anyone take you aside? Is it more of a, take a little bit from every pile and make your own way through it? Or like, what were the lessons that you learned working with Hockey Canada?
Yeah, and I think that's a tremendous question mark. I think, obviously there are many lessons learned and many invaluable lessons. And I'll never forget the first thing that Scott Salmon told me when he hired me is just make sure that, you're the hardest worker, that you work as hard as you can and that you're the hardest worker in the room. And, I know on the national team side in our department, it's much like the National Hockey League. You're working, long hours, you're going above and beyond the job description. You're doing whatever it takes to win gold medals, but not only that, to provide world-class hockey experience for all your participants. So, that would be lesson number one. And then lesson number two is probably, just treat people how you wish to be treated and treat everybody with respect. So, obviously those lessons you learn over time. And, when you're very competitive and very driven, there's some ups and downs, but I know the one thing I learned from Scott is just the way you treat people, they'll never forget it. And I believe that's what makes Hockey Canada so special. So, and that, for myself, when I say it's difficult to leave that position, it definitely is because it's a world-class organization with tremendous people. And, it's always a pleasure to chase gold medals. But for myself, there's a lot of parallels between Hockey Canada and the Montreal Canadiens. And, that's I'm looking forward to that transition as well. But I would say work ethic and then character and how you treat people and making sure everyone has a positive experience. Those are probably the greatest lessons that I learned.
So it's more than hockey, right? I mean, we talk about the Hockey Canada mindset. We hear the program of excellence. Obviously, that's produced some ridiculously talented players, but that mentality, that whole Hockey Canada mentality, goes well beyond when you're on the ice competing for medals, right? Like, you guys are essentially trying to set these young men up for life beyond hockey. Would that be fair to say?
100%, 100%. I mean, if you take somebody like myself, I came through the program of excellence and I started at the under 17 level. I played under 17s, then moved on to the under 18 level, and then was a part of a national junior team summer camp as a player. And, when I was going through that experience, you meet people like Scott Salmond, who's in a similar role as mine at the time, and Ron Payette, who has now moved on to scout. And I believe he got to start scouting with the Montreal Canadiens as well. And, so you go through that cycle, and then, you start to think like, hey, this would be something I would love to do one day if hockey doesn't work out. So in terms of that, treating people the right way, treating them with respect and making sure they have a great experience, it's ultimately probably the biggest part of it. And, going through that, I realized that was something that I wanted to do. And I think in terms of the players, you're right. I mean, we always say that you're going to be a person a lot longer than you're a hockey player. So I think,
I love that.
The lessons that we can impart onto the players and the athletes that come through our program, they're invaluable. And, the athletes in the program of excellence, like this past World Junior group, the 2001 borns and the 2002s. I mean, the 2001s primarily, we've had them since they were 16, and now they're growing, and now they're moving on to, the National Hockey League, and they've all gone through the draft. And it's pretty interesting to see them grow throughout the years, but it's even better to help them out as people, just as well as helping them out as hockey players. So it's a great experience for sure.
I really like that line that you're going to be, a person a lot longer than you're going to be a hockey player. But let's talk about being a hockey player for a long time. You were in a bubble. Were you in the bubble, first of all, in Edmonton? Were you part of actually, I mean, I know that you had to organize the logistics, but I don't know who got let in and whatnot. I assume you were there, right?
Yes, I was.
For the entire time?
Correct.
How many days was that?
I believe the total was 53 days.
Because you got there before the players, probably, right? Knowing what you had to do?
Yes, slightly before.
So 2 months in a bubble.
Essentially, correct.
Okay. I mean, that was a very impressive group of young men there, but how do you keep the peace for 2 months? That's a lot of time. I mean, and also, what did you take from it? I'm sure it didn't all go perfectly. I'm sure there's some things you can improve. There's some stuff you learned. How did the young men deal with it? I hate using the term kids because they're young men at this point, but also they're kind of kids. So how did you guys deal with that whole quarantine situation? 2 months in a bubble is a very long time.
Yeah, you know what, Mark? I think another great question. I mean, first of all, I think the passion of our group, the relationships that we had, the friendships that we had, like I said, we worked with the majority of these athletes, the support staff, the coaching staff, the management group, through the under 17 program, the under 18 program, and then the U20 program. And so I think those relationships and friendships really helped us get off on the right foot. Mm-hmm. And then, I think for us, it was really a team effort. I mean, somebody like Brendan Baxendall, coordinator of national teams, and then Tyler Dietrich as well, assistant coach. Scott Salmond, our senior vice president, was there the entire time and away from his family. Chelsea Stewart, coordinator of national teams, was helping us manage the COVID-19 protocols and testing. And, it was incredibly cumbersome. And then, you factor in the fact that the athletes and all the staff had to go into a quarantine for 14 days in hotel rooms in the middle of camp. There were a lot of challenges and there was a lot of adversity, and I know the general public's aware of that, but I think until you're actually inside the bubble and you're in a day-to-day and you can't go outside technically, other than getting off the bus, going into the arena in Red Deer, then in Edmonton, we weren't outside at all. It's a long haul. And, I can't say enough about the job that the management group did, the coaching staff led by Andre Tourigny, supported by Mitch Love, Michael Dick, Jason LaBarbera, James Emery. They did an incredible job to keep the players engaged. And I will say about Andre, it didn't matter what adversity that we faced or what hurdles that came our way or his way as the head coach. Mm-hmm. He just took it, accepted it, got over the hurdle, moved on. And he just kept his eyes facing forward. And I know that the entire group read off of that, all the staff, all the athletes. And that's why we were able to have a successful turn as you're able to have. But honestly, in terms of any perceived animosity or any of that, I think, there really was none. And, I've said to a number of people, it wasn't like, you're waiting to get out of the bubble. Everybody loved being in the bubble, and that probably points to the job the events crew did as well, and to make everybody feel comfortable. And anytime you're around a Canadian environment in a Canadian jersey and competing for a gold medal, it's a lot of fun, and our group thoroughly enjoyed it.
It's always interesting to hear the behind the scenes because everything ran smoothly. So we just assumed, it's kind of the duck situation, right? Looked cool and calm on top, but paddling like hell underneath. Now, you dealt with a very impressive young man. I've had a chance to speak to him, and he confirmed your not theory, but your statement about no animosity. Caden Gully. I'd like for you to give me your impressions on him. Honest impressions if you can. I was, and I'll be perfectly honest here, Ben, he impressed me in the sense that maybe my expectations were a little too low. I was expecting a stay-at-home guy. I heard about his offense. I only got to watch maybe 12 times. So, I wasn't expert on him, but he really impressed me at the World Juniors. I thought he was aggressive, good timing, and especially he's still very young. He might have the body of a full-grown man. He's still an 18-year-old. So what were your impressions of Caden Gully at the World Juniors?
Well, my impressions of Caden were, again, they're nothing short of exceptional. And, obviously I've been fortunate enough to follow Caden through the under-17 program, through the under-18 program, and then, this past experience at the under-20 level with the under-20 program. And, I think the first thing that stands out to me about Caden is he's an incredible person. And I think, the fans of the Montreal Canadiens and the entire organization has seen that and seen his maturity and has realized that his maturity is beyond his years. And, having met Caden the first time and actually seeing him the first time playing in, the WHL Cup here at the under-16 level for Team Alberta, it was not only his maturity, but it was his professionalism. And if you followed him through his junior hockey career and you get to know him off the ice, he does everything right. He's prepared. He goes through the right routines. He takes care of his body. And he's honestly the true professional. And the best part is he's only 18 years old.
Right?
So what that has said, not only to myself, but I believe our entire staff and the entire organization, not only with the Montreal Canadiens, but with Hockey Canada has realized as well over the years is that, Caden's going to do whatever it takes to get better. And he's still growing. He's still improving as a player. He's extremely coachable. He's very low maintenance, if any maintenance. And he's just a tremendous person that you love to have in your locker room and love to have as a part of your organization. So it's been a pleasure to get to know Caden. I know when we were able to select him on draft day, I mean, we were fist pumping and we were jumping for joy behind the scenes because we know his potential. We know what he's capable of, and we know he's only going to get better. But in terms of the hockey side with Caden, what you see is what you get. He's a true pro. He's an incredible skater, a great athlete. His lower body power, his skating stride, his glide, his posterior chain, his strength, his competitiveness, his bite. And I do believe that there's some untapped offensive potential. And I believe our entire group believes that as well. And he's only going to continue to grow that side of his game. So he's an incredible player, but more importantly, he's an incredible person. And we all believe he's going to fit in tremendously to the Montreal Canadiens organization.
I've had a chance to speak to some of his coaches and some of his opponents, and that's the first thing that comes to mind. They say, yeah, professional, a really good player, but geez, this is a good young man. Now, that brings us into our next point. Let's talk about scouting a little bit here. What do you look for, first of all? Like, how do you start scouting? Explain it to us people that sit on the couch and say, yeah, he's a good player when he's already in the NHL. It doesn't, we're way past that point. How do you find that needle in the haystack when the haystack keeps moving and the farmer keeps moving, like adding more hay and then it goes away for a couple of years? And then, how does scouting work? Where do you start step one?
Yeah, well, again, great question, Mark. And I guess the first thing I'll say is I truly believe that every time you go to the arena, you learn something. You learn something either about a player that you know or a player that you didn't know, or you pick up some sort of information either from someone else who's around the rink or just from watching the game. But so I think step one is, obviously getting to the arena. You've heard the stories in terms of the travel and what scouts have to go through, but
Lots
I
of
truly
coffee.
believe, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And, when you're driving through, the different provinces across Canada or areas of the United States in the
Yeah.
winter, it can be tough, right?
I call them moose roads. There's where the deer and the moose reside. Those are those dark roads at night when you're driving to get to some small arena, right? There's a lot of that.
Absolutely. You got to keep your head on a swivel and make sure you're staying awake. But no, so that's the first part of it is you have to have the work ethic to drive, and you have to get to the arena because you're going to learn something no matter what. Obviously with scouting every year with the Canadiens, we scout 2 years out. So we'll scout and we'll evaluate the underage players, and we'll already have a preliminary list coming into the season. So all of our regional scouts will have our list of players that we need to focus on. And then the next part's really your relationships, the relationships that you build with the general managers across the league, different support staff, different coaches. And then, staying connected with all those people and really tapping into their brains, getting their opinions. And, sometimes asking them, hey, anybody standing out, anyone that we should key in on? Because ultimately, something Ryan Jankowski taught me a long time ago is that you cannot be in every arena on every night or on any given night. So your relationship, your network, all of those items, they're all going to play a big part into it. But I think once you get to the rink, I think for myself, it's really changed over the years. I mean, I believe it's key to stay involved and continue to watch the National Hockey League. You have to stay in tune with the NHL and what's going on there. Obviously, you have to stay in tune with your hockey club and what the needs are for the team and ultimately what the team looks for in players and how the coaching staff and management would like the team to play. But so I think that's changed for me. Primarily, I started a lot on skating. I was a big proponent of skating. You had to skate, you had to be fast in order to play fast. But, I think over the years, I've learned that, hockey sense, character, and compete. Those are probably the three top traits for a prospect and a player. So, because if you can't think the game and if you're not going to compete, if you're not a good person, you don't have the right character, you're not going to be able to play in the NHL. I think if you're not the biggest player, you're not the fastest skater, you can still find, or if your skill is slightly limited, I think you can still get to the NHL if you have those three attributes or traits. So those are probably the three primary things I look at the most.
And that you already nailed my next question, because I even wrote here at one point, I thought Mark Stone wasn't going to make the NHL. Okay. Because he was a bad skater per se, which is ironic because I sit on the couch and I eat Doritos, but I saw him. I thought this guy cannot skate. But now we don't hear that as often, right? We hear the word intelligence. We hear the word vision, anticipation. What makes a smart hockey player, and why I feel like the Canadiens, you would know more than I feel like intelligence is a huge focus right now for the prospects. You go from, Jordan Harris down to Norlander. We spoke to Cole Caulfield, hockey nerd. So what's the value of intelligence when scouting a player? And how do you, I don't know if there's an answer, but how do you define intelligence and vision and all that, all those buzzwords? How do you actually find like a tangible value there?
Yeah, again, really great question, Mark. And I think, Mark Stone's a great example. I think when you look at a player that has a hockey sense, the character and the competitor, Mark Stone, it really does stem from a love of the game and a feel for the game. So, I know you've interviewed different individuals within our organization. They've talked about hockey sense and when you can develop it. And it really does start at the grassroots and having that passion, that drive for the game and that willingness to learn. And I think when you look at hockey, minor hockey across the system, across the country, when we talk about sports specialization and, we talk about skills and practices. And, I do believe that element of free time and free play is really where, as a player, you can just discover your abilities and really learn that cognitive ability, that decision-making ability, and that intelligence that you require in order to not only play in the National Hockey League, but succeed in the National Hockey League. Because when you get to the National Hockey League, you have to fit into a team concept. You have to play with highly intelligent players, and you have to play against highly intelligent competition that pre-scout you and that key in on you and try to find ways to beat you. So for me, hockey sense, it translates into decision-making, making the right decisions at the right time, being a team player, and, ultimately doing what it takes in order to win a Stanley Cup and to win games in the playoffs. But I think, if you go into an arena, you look at hockey sense, you want to see how a player handles the puck. You want to see, what decisions is he making in the defensive zone? Is he tracking back? Is he picking up his man? Is he positionally sound? Can he play within a system? Can he play within a structure? Can he take instruction from his head coach and his assistant coaches? And ultimately, can he adjust? What happens if like if the weather changes in the middle of a game and your team or you need to adjust as a player.
Which is hockey. That's hockey, right? I mean,
that's hockey. So it comes down to that, Mark, and just having a real strong feel for the game. But I also feel that stems from a love of the game and something that's developed at a young age. But I would say those are probably my thoughts on hockey sense. And yeah, definitely an important attribute for sure.
History in the Making is brought to you by Tricot Sport, Montreal's official team store. From lifestyle brands to jerseys and beyond, Tricot Sport has a style for every sports fan in your life. Head to tricotsport.com and use coupon code HISTORYCH10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. Visit tricotsport.com today. This isn't your first time working for the Molson family, though, right? I mean, I heard someone told me that this isn't your first job working for the Molsons. Can you explain your first job with the Molsons?
Yeah, really good question. I mean, you've done some great research, and you must be from Orleans, because not a lot of people know that. But going through university, I was fortunate enough, obviously to find a great summer job as a student representative for Molson Coors in the Ottawa area. Mm-hmm. And that's really where I got my start going through university, looking for a great summer job. So to be honest, it's funny how things come full circle, working for Marty Ballard and Wayne Hall in Ottawa and their team. It was a great way to not only learn the Molson way, but learn how to treat people. And that's really when I saw, to be honest, the way that I guess the Molson family operates and how they treat people and the values that you need to learn in order to succeed, not only in hockey, but in life. So I guess to have that connection, everything come back full circle, and then be able to work for the Canadiens. And when you're around the Montreal Canadiens family and you're around that organization, you definitely see, why it's one of the most successful organizations in sports, and why Molson Coors and Molson is one of the most successful brands in the world. So that's how I got my first taste, I guess. No pun intended, of the Molson
Literally.
family, and it was a great position, great way to learn, and great way to interact with people.
This is a very important question, Ben. It's the most important question of the podcast. What's your favorite beer?
Molson Canadian, 100%.
What is Jeff Molson's favorite beer?
Oh, is it Molson X?
You're good. I think you're going to do well here. You're going to do very well.
Okay, nice.
It is export.
Molson
Yeah,
export.
absolutely.
Nice.
We talk about character, and that's something you spoke about a little bit in the intelligence. You spoke about it with the Molson Corp company. You spoke about it with Team Canada. How does that, obviously, you're clearly taking strong values and cultures from Team Canada, Hockey Canada and Molson. Did that shape you at all in your approach to scouting? Character feels like a buzzword, but there's something to be said about it, right?
There is. And I think, I think for myself, when you've been in dressing rooms, you've been in that team environment, you've worked with staff, some of the best staff in the world, in the country. When you're in those championship environments and you're in championship rooms, you really learn that when you're going to go through those tough moments and you're going to grind through the playoffs, and ultimately, for the Canadiens, when we're going to win the Stanley Cup, or when we're battling and fighting for the Stanley Cup through the playoffs, you have to have the right people that have character in order to go through those tough moments. And, when you're in those rooms and you get that feel for it and you've experienced that, you really get a feel for it. But it is tough to quantify and it's tough to see. So, that's why I know, working with Trevor and the entire scouting staff, Marty Lapointe and everyone with Montreal Canadiens, is we really do dig into that side of things. And because that's arguably the most important piece, because when you're selecting a player at the draft, you want them to fit into your dressing room. It's not a short-term thing. You want that prospect to be a part of your organization, your family, for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and even after that. So no matter what, every person, obviously you're selecting people, not hockey players, but you're selecting people to be a part of your organization. That character component's extremely important. That's what I've been able to learn, through as a player throughout my time in the Ontario Hockey League, throughout my time playing in youth sports, and then now my time in a support staff role and a support role at Hockey Canada. I've been able to be in those environments, learn from those people, and really get a feel for those championship and character traits. So it's extremely important because when we're looking at players, we always say, okay, what's Carey Price going to think when this prospect or this player comes into our dressing room? What's Shea Weber going to think? What's Brendan Gallagher going to think?
Oh.
What's Jeff Petrie going to think? And all those character traits are extremely invaluable. And I believe that's, having gone through the path I've gone through, it's given me a very good learning opportunity to get a real good feel and a good sense for that.
What, speaking of, working in healthy environments, obviously scouting, you guys are well supported, but now things have changed, right? First of all, did you ever do video scouting before? Were you a big video scout guy, or because some guys love it, some guys hate it. So it depends. What's your take on it?
Yeah, great question, Mark. I think, I really got my first taste. I mean, you always value video.
Okay.
You value any information you can get as an evaluator of talent, as a scout, as a manager, as a coach. So, I mean, again, going through as a player, I've been watching video now for multiple years, just in different forms. So I've always known the value of video, especially being a former defenseman. You're going in the playoffs, you're matching up against different forwards and other teams. You need to study the opponent. You need to value video, and what you see in video, you'll catch things that your eyes don't necessarily see. And that's the same thing with analytics, with data. For tracking advanced statistics and additional information, it all supports what your eyes see, or it doesn't support what your eyes see. That to me, it all factors into to scouting and player evaluation. But I believe from an evaluation standpoint, I really got my first taste probably in 2019. We were building the Spengler Cup team, and I worked closely with Sean Burke, obviously, and he was scouting on the pro side for the Canadiens, and he was very busy, but Sean was amazing, just to include me in everything from a player standpoint. And, we were both working on that team, and we weren't able to go over to Europe, to see all the Canadian players, right, that are playing overseas. So, what's the only way we can see them? It's on video. So, I know we both dug into those players. We both shared names, and we looked at the numbers, and then, Sean would say, hey, take a look at these names, Ben, let me know what you think. And, I'd take a look at them on Insta and say, yes, I think this player could help us, or no, this player couldn't help us. So that was really, I got my first taste of it, and Sean was great to include me in all those elements of assembling that team. And, but no, I do extremely value video, and I believe everybody now in the hockey world, from a player evaluation scouting standpoint, definitely values it, especially considering the present landscape and what's happened over the past 12, 16 months.
Yeah, and God only knows how it'll advance. So it's a skill to have. Now, you spoke briefly there about analytics or data analysis. We don't have a ton of numbers from these young guys, and there's so many variables. But what's your approach on the whole data analysis? I know you said it's a useful tool. Do you use it regularly? Do you watch first, look at numbers after? How do you approach the subject?
Yeah, you know what, Mark, I think for myself, I'm still learning and still growing in that area, but I believe through my experiences with Hockey Canada, especially, this past year with the national junior team, I've got my feet wet in that area. And if anything, I've learned the value of analytics and of data, because again, for this team last year, our entire staff, we didn't have, we knew a lot of the players from the program of excellence from scouting and from years past, and the work that Brad McEwen did as our former head scout with Hockey Canada. But at the same time, we had to be creative, and we had to find new ways to evaluate players. So we built a player card. We built basically an assembly of statistics and numbers and data that we looked at and that we valued, not only on the management side, but the coaching staff side as well, which is imperative, because ultimately, the coaching staff, we need to help find the right players that fit into what the coaching staff would like to see in the team and how the coaching staff would like the team to play. So we had an assortment of statistics. We had player cards where we would look at different sets of data. Unfortunately, I can't share all of those numbers, but it really evaluated all aspects of a player. It evaluated their defensive play, their offensive play, special teams are playing the neutral zone, obviously possession statistics and numbers, their decision-making with the puck, offensive zone generating plays, defensive plays, somebody like a defenseman for Caden Gully. We look at his gap control, how's his stick, how many plays is he breaking up, block shots, all that stuff. So we had a player card that we had for each player. And then, we assigned different values to each number, and we found a way to separate each of those numbers and really paint a picture of each player and where they would fit in and how they would help Team Canada. And so I'll be honest, I'm still getting I'm still learning on that side of things, and still getting my feet wet, but plan to use it more heavily and continue to use it here in the near future with the Canadiens.
What is The best tip you've received about scouting. I'm sure, listen, I go to the rinks and I see you guys chatting in the back there. Usually near, if there's good coffee, it's near the good coffee machine. What's the best tips you've received about scouting? I know a lot of guys share advice, or maybe what did they tell you to avoid, or what did they tell you specifically to look for? I'm sure you've received a lot of probably unsolicited, and a lot of solicited advice as well. So what have they been telling you?
Definitely. I think that's another great question, Mark. I mean, you can answer that in a number of different ways. It's tough to really center in on one tip, but
Yeah.
I believe like in talking with Trevor and Shane Churla, formerly who's now at the Florida Panthers, obviously, but in talking with Trevor, he really stresses that we need to keep an open mind on every player that we see. And the one thing is when you're in your own territory, in your own region, you see players continuously and you get to know them. It's easy for you to get hard on players. And I know another thing that Trevor had said is focus on what a player can do. So, every player has flaws. Every player you're going to see, he has deficiencies, and that's not going to change whether you're a first line player, second line player, fourth line player, goaltender, healthy scratch. Every player is going to have deficiencies, but instead focus on a player, what he can do and what he can bring to the Montreal Canadiens. So that's obviously step number one. And then obviously keeping an open mind is extremely important. Again, these players and these athletes and these people, they're teenagers. So you're going to go see an athlete or a player on one night. He may have a great night, and then the next night you'll see him and he won't have a great night. But it's really ensuring that you're keeping an open mind. You're not being biased, that you're not being too hard on players, and you really have to look at the entire picture. You have to look at the entire book of the player, and then really formulate your opinion at the end of it, and then determine how they can help the Montreal Canadiens. So those are a few tips I could share with you. I hope I'm not sharing all the tips or tricks of the trade, but again, it's just knowing that, the prospects that we're evaluating, we're not evaluating them for the here and now, or we don't want them to play for Montreal Canadiens tomorrow. We want them to play for the Montreal Canadiens down the road 2, 3, 5 years, and we want them to be Montreal Canadiens for life. So it's about keeping an open mind. It's about looking at that entire book, using all the information that you can, and then formulating your opinion and selecting the best players and the best people and the best prospects.
You're answering my questions ahead of time within the one answer. I love it because that shows foresight, and that's what we want you to do with the Montreal Canadiens. Now, here's one. You have worked with the Canadiens. Now you're full time, but you have maybe a little bit less of a biased opinion. What do you think about their prospect pool? We're hearing really strong on defense. Obviously, there's some talent up front, but I'd like to get your honest opinion on the Canadiens prospect pool if you had a chance to really take a long look there.
Yeah, really good question, Mark. I think when you look at the prospect pool, it's one that's very deep. Obviously, I believe we have depth. In all areas of the prospect pool. I think we're probably strongest, on left defense with some of the defensemen that we have there: Jaden Struble, Jordan Harris, Caden Gully, and some of the other prospects. I mean, we're definitely in a fortunate situation there. And then, I think to be able to have a blue chip prospect like Cole Caulfield, again, who I've seen throughout under 18s, under 17s, and, now the World Juniors and some of the damage he's done against international competition. I don't think like the prospect pool, could not be in a better place. And again, Misak, he was at the World Juniors as well. And I mean, I think we have depth in all areas. And I think the best part is we have different types of players. So, I know when we're going into any draft that we go into, Trevor, Marty Lapointe, Malc Bergevin, they focus on asset acquisition. So I know that's a big focus of Trevor. You'll hear him use the word asset value. And at the end of the day, we're not going to any specific drafting for any specific need. We want to pick the best players and we want to pick the best prospects. And then from there, when we build our stock and we build our cupboard and, it becomes a little bit more plentiful and fruitful, which it is now, then we have the assets that Mark eventually is going to be able to use as a general manager to help improve the Canadiens and make us a Stanley Cup team, which he has done. So again, for us, it's all about asset acquisition, acquiring the best players, and some of those names that I've named, and there's some other names that are now in Laval and working with our American League team in our system. It's a great time for the Montreal Canadiens, and we have strengths in a lot of different areas.
Can you we often ask the players to do this. Can you describe your ideal player by taking skills from other players? Okay, so I need 5 things here. Do I need 5 things? Yes. Okay. Yes. I need 5 things. I need vision. Your ideal, like, you know what I mean? Like basically like the Andrei Markov vision, skating, heart, the Gallagher. I mean, sorry, I don't want to give your answer. So vision, skating, heart, shot, and creativity. So what is your ideal player? Who would you take the vision from?
I would take probably Nick Suzuki.
Really? Okay.
And yes. Again, having work with Nick within our program, and if you see how he played in the bubble in the NHL playoffs, to see how he's playing now, again, that's probably his greatest strength is his hockey sense, is his ability to process the game, and is his vision. It's his head, absolutely, along with his character. And he's a great skater. He's got great hands. He's got a good shot. But I think with Nick, it's probably his vision and his decision making with the puck. And I think that's probably who I would take that from.
What about skating? And it doesn't have to be a Canadiens player, but we'd obviously prefer it would be. But what about skating? And let's take Connor McDavid out of the picture. So who would you take the skating from?
Well, I think you're leading me in the right direction, but I'd probably use, I'll go back to one of our players, our prospects, and I'll use Caden Gully. I think when you look at a player, you look at their skating ability. It's not so much, how fast they're going, how quick they're going, but it's also how efficient and how effective they're being and how efficiently they're skating. So when I look at a prospect like Caden, I call it stride efficiency, and how elongated his stride is, how long his glide is, and how powerful he is. He can play a lot of minutes in heavy situations against top opponents. And further to that, he can cover a lot of area and get a lot of things accomplished due to his skating ability that other players can't. So he would probably be the one player I would look at for skating ability. I think it's different for every player and every prospect. Every player, there's different forms of skating. You got to look at their legs and their body, their ankles, how they adjust, how they, are they a straight line skater? Do they have a lateral game? Can they get off the tracks? Do they have quickness? How do they cross over? How do they transition? What's their transitional ability? So
it's not, are they just fast? That's a little,
exactly.
Because
like anybody can be fast. The other thing is, are they fast with the puck? Like it's
so it's speed of execution
Absolutely.
Because that's the Connor McDavid factor, right? It's not just that he's fast. It's that he breaks
absolutely.
the game open. Yeah. Okay. So, and what I really like about Gully, before we get too off track, it's not he skates well for ... a big guy. He skates well, full stop. I mean, this guy, people are telling me his lateral transitions, everything, just the power he gives. So keep an eye on Caden Gully. Yeah, big guy, but skates well without the caveat of being a big guy. Now, next one, Hart. Who would you take Hart from?
Brendan Gallagher, no question. I mean, it's easy. Everyone in Montreal knows that. Everyone in the organization. I mean, you saw how emotional Mark was, when he signed Brendan to his new contract. And I mean, you saw how he played in the bubble in the playoffs. And to me, I think Brendan embodies everything that the Montreal Canadiens are about. And he embodies the Montreal Canadiens. So, and I think you see a player who plays at his size, who does everything right. You talk to people, you talk to Ty Smith, who spent time with him in the off season, and people have been around him in the gym and his training, how he takes care of his body, his nutrition. Everyone in the Canadiens organization who's around him on a day-to-day basis he embodies everything the Canadiens are about, and that's Hart. And, when you watch for his size, the areas he goes to on the ice, he goes to the corners, he goes down low the goal line, he goes to the front of the net, he goes to the blue paint, he takes abuse, and he still wants to keep going. He wants to keep playing. He just can't keep him down. So for me, it has to be Brendan Gallagher in terms of Hart. And I think, I know that's one player that everyone in the organization refers to, and Trevor refers to strongly in terms of his compete, his drive, his willingness to get better, but his willingness to be a great teammate as well. And, we really use him as the model of what we look for in terms of that character piece and that heart piece in all of our players and all of our prospects.
That is perfectly said. All right, we're going to move on to shot, and we're going to stay within the Canadiens here because, you've been nailing it. I was giving you the option to go outside the organization, but you've been nailing it. So what's the ideal shot to you? I have a feeling I know who you're going to reference here, but so who would you take their shot from?
Yeah, and I'll probably reference, Mark, I'll reference two people. I mean, you're leading me in the right direction again. I would go, I would say Shea Weber, obviously, from a power standpoint, just the pure hardness of his shot. I mean, you watch games on a nightly basis, and there's very few players in the league, if any, that want to get in front of his shot. So that's obviously an incredible asset, and that's gotten Shea throughout his career. But, I think if you look at a player like Thomas Tatar and the goals that he's scored recently in the first 3 games, and, I think sometimes with your shot, it's not about how hard it is. It's about how quickly you get it off and how accurate it is.
Mario Lemieux used to always say that, like, power isn't that important, but speed of release and accuracy so much more important, right?
Absolutely. And Jesperi Kotkaniemi shoots very similar. It's your release point. It's how it gets off. Can the goalie read it? Can he pick it up? And for me with Thomas, I would look at his shot and how, accurate it is, how quick it is. And, it's not only how quick, how quick you get off, it's where you place it in the net. Do you put it in a place that the goaltender can't get to, or you're reading his movements? And some of that's hockey sense as well. But I'd probably use those two players and Jesperi as well as great examples.
I love that you mentioned Jesperi Kotkaniemi, but to me, and I'm saying this as a fan, I want to see him shoot a lot more. Obviously, it takes a little bit of time, right, to gain that greediness. You don't want to defer, but Jesperi, if you're listening, take a lot more shots. We all want to see you shoot more often. You have a great shot. And finally, what about creativity? Who would you pick from the Canadiens roster to really share their creativity with everyone else on the roster?
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I think I'd have to go to, I could say Nick Suzuki again, but I'll go to Jeff Petrie, and how he's playing. Like, everyone saw that play he made against Edmonton, and they call it the self-hand pass, whatever he made. And I mean, we would have to ask Jeff if he meant to do that on purpose, but I guess
of course he did.
Yeah. Of course he did. Absolutely. Right. But I think just to have, again, the cognitive ability to make that decision and the athleticism, just to make that play with his hand and then to catch the other side of the net. I think I felt that was extremely creative, and he's a creative defenseman. He's having a strong season offensively and contributing in many ways to our hockey club. But Nick Suzuki, again, he's another player who's incredibly creative, and it's his vision, but it's his hockey sense, and it's finding different ways to solve problems on the ice is basically what it is, right? So in order to do that, you can't do the same thing every time, every place. You have to do different things. You have to be creative. You have to find different ways to find solutions to different problems that you'll see and you'll face on the ice. I would use Nick as well as a great example of that, and he's an extremely creative player also.
Which brings us for full circle here, because we talked about intelligence to open the show. We talked about intelligence mid-show, and that is, Nick Suzuki has all the skills, but he has the computer to put it all together. As do you, Ben. Thank you so much, first of all, for answering all my questions before I even asked half of them. That was incredible. That was fantastic. We're excited to see what you could do with the organization. And again, thank you so much for joining us.
Merci beaucoup, Marc. Je suis très excité de travailler avec l'équipe. Et à bientôt. Merci beaucoup, et go Habs go.
And a big thank you to Ben Shutron for joining us. Fascinating look at the scouting department. Obviously, the Canadiens have put a big focus on development and scouting, and I think Ben will fit in nicely with that open mind about things, really intense. So the future of the franchise, he's a big part of that. Obviously, we're going to see how it goes, but it's exciting to have him on board. It's always good to have a really smart guy on board, too. That's what I love, speaking to intellectuals about hockey. Like, they're hockey nerds. Just like Cole Caulfield was a hockey nerd on the ice, Shutron's a hockey nerd off the ice. So thanks for joining us, Ben. As always, we'll be alternating 1 week here. La semaine prochaine, ça va être l'histoire s'écrit. It's available wherever you get your podcast. You probably know that if you're listening to it, but don't forget to rate it. Let us know exactly what you want to hear and see in future episodes. This is your podcast, so we're doing this for you. Encore une fois, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. Go Habs, go.